All right, Shalom. I want to start off by giving all praise, honor, and glory due to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash. I'd like to give divine honors unto the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, where I learned this truth from, and I'd like to say peace and salutations unto the hopefully elect. And today, the inspiration for this lesson comes from this post, that I came across the other day. And it says, Black grandma who married at 14 now has over 250 grandchildren. So, I'm just going to read the caption from this post and then bring out a few scriptures. Lord willing, this lesson is edifying, straight to the point. And it says, Margie, an 84-year-old African-American grandmother from Oakland, California, was a child bride at 14 and now has a sprawling family that includes 150 grandchildren, 50 great-grandchildren, and 50 great-great-grandchildren. Her legacy stretches across 5 generations and continues to grow. Born in Amarillo, Texas, Margie had 5 children before turning 21 and eventually gave birth to 8 children, 7 of whom survived in adulthood. Her family quickly expanded, branching out over multiple generations and forming a remarkable family tree. She recently appeared on the Jennifer Hudson show to celebrate her family and reflect on the generation she helped raise. Margie admitted that with so many descendants, she doesn't know everyone by name. I have 7 adult children, and so when I get down to the 4th generation and the 5th generation, I say that is my son's daughter, and that is my daughter's daughter, family. She said, according to people, but I am so blessed, Jennifer. I am blessed to be here and to know that there are families supporting you. Her family has achieved a lot, with so many earning college degrees, becoming homeowners, and starting businesses. One of Margie's daughter, Pat, shared one of my nephews is almost getting his white jacket to be a doctor. The other one is in the fire academy to be a firefighter. And then the one just passed the bar. So we are on fire. So, it just goes to show you, well, this proves a couple things. First and foremost, it shows that, women during that particular time, because it says she got married in, 1934? From what it said somewhere, Salakia. But when I read it, said, but either way it goes, but it just goes to show you that in the early 1900s, women, they got married young and they also had children young. So, that's one point. The second one being is that us, the Israelites, so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native and Seminole Indians, we're a fruitful people. So that's how again, that we are the people, because we are a very fruitful nation, man. We're known to have a lot of children and we grow very quickly, And 3, there's no mention whatsoever of her husband, whether he's alive, whether he passed, no mention of granddaddy whatsoever, because without him, none of that would be possible. None of his children would be there. But, it just, it is what it is. But just focusing on the main 2 points, man, that I want to get is that, women were married young and that, we're a fruitful nation of people, So real quick, I want to start with the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 7 and verse 36. And it says, but if any man think that he behaveth himself uncomely toward his virgin, if she pass the flower of her age, and need so require, let him do what he will. He sinneth not, let them marry. So right, that woman, Margie, most likely hit puberty between the ages of 12 and 14. It's been broken down so many times, but you still have guys that get emotional, concerning not only this, but also Deuteronomy the 22nd chapter, concerning the grape, situation, and what was done in the ancient world. Obviously, we wouldn't do this in today's time because time is different. You wouldn't marry a woman, that young, because again, in today's society is frowned upon. Our primary enemy, runs the world. Esau, Edom, the so-called white man. And he's changed, the times and, the laws. But again, said she was married at 14. Again, that's why I added that at the end, because there was no mention of her husband whatsoever, not even by name, which is crazy, man. This goes to show you that, America is a matriarch, man. It's this woman worship. Oh yeah, without, grandma, this wouldn't be. No, without your grandfather, it wouldn't have been possible, because it says she had 7 or 8 children by the time she was 21, So again, they were, just popping them out, So she's seen, from the 1930s until now, because she's 84, again, she would have been born, roughly in the 30s sometime, but no mention of the grandfather whatsoever, man. You have to understand that your lineage, Slakia, doesn't go by, your mother or your grandmother. It goes by your father, because without your father, there would be no you, So that's one thing our people have, bad, especially in today's time. They don't reverence their fathers enough, because again, you started in him. We all started inside of our father. And what I mean, again, in his, all right, you know what I mean. Not even to get vulgar, man, but, just we all started in our father's nutsack, man. That's how we all got here, through a heterosexual relationship, through, between a man and a woman. But again, we're a very fruitful nation of people. And that goes to show you that, again, times were different. She was able to bear, 7 to 8 children by the time she was 21. Obviously, she probably would have had, midwives back then, because, obviously they didn't have the technology that we had back then. So, possibly, for her at least, giving birth may have been, a little easier, because women nowadays, certain of them, they do have, complications. It's hard on their body, but again, we're a very, very fruitful nation of people, right? So let me get that real quick, and I'll start with with Jacob, because, as we know, or should know, that, the promise was given to Abraham, was eventually passed down to Isaac, and was passed down to Jacob and his 12 sons. But this verse right here, is applying to, Jacob, right? But I'll get Genesis chapter 23, Genesis chapter 28 and verse 3, and it says, "And Yahweh Almighty bless thee, and make thee fruitful, and multiply thee, that thou mayest be a multitude of people, and give thee the blessing of Abraham to thee, and to thy seed with thee, that thou mayest inherit the land wherein thou art a stranger, which I gave unto Abraham." And right, one of the promises was that, the Lord will multiply us as the sand of the sea, as the stars of heaven, which can be, measured or numbered, because we're a very, very large nation, which is why eventually, once we get in the kingdom, we're eventually going to have to branch out, because there's going to be so many of us, man. The earth won't be able to contain us, So we're going to have to stretch out, which, let me back that up real quick in the book of John, chapter 4, and verse 22. Slakia, not chapter 4, but John chapter 14. Slakia. John chapter 14 and verse 2. And it says, "In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you." Now, when we hear mansions, we think of, very large houses, estates. No, that's not what the Lord is talking about, man. He's talking about planets, because this one, stand up that stuck out to me, ever since I seen it. Cat Williams, he made a joke about it. I forgot how long ago it was, but, he made a joke. Said, man, there are 16 super Earths, even though he's joking about it, he's bugged out, but at the same time, like, he's serious though, man. Like, there are literally other planets out there that are just like Earth, man. We'll just have to wait and see, but this is what, our Lord Yahweh Shai is talking about. That's that place that he's preparing for us, man. These different planets that we're going to inhabit, man, because we're going to be a very, very large nation of people. This is what the Lord promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, man, that he was going to multiply us. And we can see glimpses of that on this side, man, because this, particular situation is just one example, man. This woman, she has 250 grandchildren altogether, including great-grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren. So she doesn't even know them all by name, but you know what? She helped raise them, and that's going to be us in the kingdom, man. We're going to have a lot of children, which is why we're going to need multiple women, right? Because certain Israelite groups that have you believe that, we're only going to have one woman. No, man. No. There's a reason for that, So let me grab this right quick, and this is really the main point right here. So it's the book of Isaiah, chapter 60 and verse 22. And it says, "A little one shall become 1,000, and a small one a strong nation. I, the Lord, will hasten it in his time." And right, man. Said a little one is talking about one Israelite man is going to become 1,000. So how is one man going to become 1,000? That one man having 1,000 women and bearing children to all of those, or, getting those 1,000 women pregnant and those 1,000 women bearing his children, because again, just like it says in Zechariah, the 13th chapter, which I'll just grab, it says that 2/3 are going to be cut off. So this is the book of Zechariah, chapter 13 and verse 8. And it says, "And it shall come to pass that in all the land, saith the Lord, 2 parts therein shall be cut off and die, but the third shall be left therein." And right, man. So 2/3 of the nation of Israel are going to die on this side. They're not going to make it because, they're not going to repent for their sins, because they refused to turn back to the Lord while they had time. They didn't take heed, to the men of the Lord, so they're going to die. Just like it says in 2 Esdras, 9 and verse 12, man, they're going to know it after death by pain, but reincarnation is biblical, and that's how the Israelites that don't make it on this side are going to be brought back, through the elect. Excuse me. So that's how a little one is going to become 1,000, because one Israelite man is going to be likened unto a nation of its own, because that's how many of us is going to be, And this is why the other nations, which I'm reading through right now, in the book of Exodus, what did Pharaoh do? He's seeing that, Israel was growing as a nation, man. So what? He put hell on us. So the more hell he put on us, what happened? The more we multiplied, man. Which you can somewhat see today, because Esau, Edom, while his population is declining, what? Our numbers are increasing, there are more, Israelite children. And even, with these other nations, their children are being born, but what? Esau, Edom, his population is declining, man. He isn't producing, fruit. And not literal fruit, but, the fruit of the womb, And this is why, again, he is one of the main reasons why he's so upset at us. because we're a very fruitful people, and he's not producing, like he should, which is why, this man is going to seek to, take us out, but he won't be able to, you know. So I'll actually end it with this, because again, that is a joyful thing, to be able to witness, your children, not only your children grow, but your children have children and your children's children have children, man. It's a very, very beautiful thing to see. On this side, obviously, we're not going to be able to, fully, those of us, those brethren out there that do have, wives and children, we're not going to be able to fully, enjoy spending time with them, like we want to until we get in the kingdom, But I'm going to end it with the book of Sirach, chapter 25 and verse 7. And it says, "There be 9 things which I have judged in mine heart, to be happy, and the 10th will I utter with my tongue. A man that hath joy of his children, and he that liveth to see the fall of his enemy." And right. And even though it says a man, because they didn't mention the grandfather whatsoever, which I personally think is BS, they could have at least mentioned his name, how old he was, when he got married to, that woman. But, how that goes. But either way, that woman lived to, watch her children grow, to watch her children's children grow, and, her children's children, grow up, man. So that's a beautiful thing. And the second part of that, it says, "And he that liveth to see the fall of his enemy." All right. And even though this isn't the focus of the video, but that's still what we're witnessing in today's sign. We're seeing the fall of our enemy, Esau, Edom, man. So that's, a joyful thing for us to see, man. That makes us happy. When I say us, us being the hopeful elect, we're hoping to be delivered out of this place, so that we can obtain salvation to obtain the kingdom, man, because that is a joyful thing to see, that America is going down, man. And Esau, Edom is upset. The 2/3, they're going to be disappointed. And so are the other nations, but it's all good. Because just like it says, man, they try to, in Psalms 83, the different nations, primarily Esau, they try to cut us off from being a nation. But what? Israel will never be cut off. We're going to forever grow, as a nation of people. We're going to be innumerable, You'll never be able to number us, because that's how many of us there are, So Lord willing, this lesson was edifying. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory due to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rukakwadash. I'd like to give double honors unto the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who are learned this truth from, and I'd like to say peace and salutations unto the hopefully elect. Till next time I say, Shalom.